Luang Por asks about hell. Luang Por asked me, "Have you ever gone to hell, Naraka?" With permission, Luang Por, I have gone to hell. Luang Por asked, "What kinds of deeds, karma, sent you to hell?" I proceeded to recount the story about when I went to hell to Luang Por. Once, when I was married, my wife had a younger sister. She was a fully blossomed woman of great beauty. I really don't even want to write about this. You can all surmise what transpired on your own. However, I did tell Luang Por about how I violated the precept, sila, of refraining from sexual misconduct, kame sumichachara. After I died, those actions, karma, resulted in my going to a sub-hell called Akipaya. This hell was all fire and existed specifically to punish those who had violated the sexual misconduct, kame sumichachara, precept. This hell was an enormous tunnel with steel walls and steel floors. The steel plates that encircled this hell were very thick, and it was an expansive hell. Wherever I looked, all I would see was fire shooting out of red-hot steel plates. Every part of my body was burnt to a crisp. After my body had been burned, the flames would die down. Then it would regenerate, and I would get burned by the flames again. This continued for a very long time. There were many people subjected to this hell. I don't know who was there because you couldn't recognize anyone. All men and women who violate the sexual misconduct precept will be subjected to this hell. Nothing can be compared to that suffering and torment. Once the fires of hell die down, all that remains of you is a skeleton. The heat scales down to a warm vapor. Skin and flesh regenerate. Then, the flames of hell erupt once more. That is how it was for who knows how many years. After the karma had been exhausted, I knew that I was free from hell. I mentally resolved never to break the sexual misconduct precept again. I was so terrified of the heat from the flames of this hell that I was scared straight. That resolution formed a mindset that has stuck with me until this present rebirth. In this lifetime, I feel shame. I would not dare to break this precept because of the shame I feel within. I would not act like an animal, dhirachana, anymore. After I finished my story, Luang Por guffawed and exclaimed, "You and I went to the same hell." Then I asked Luang Por Khao to tell the story about when he went to hell. Luang Por Khao said, "A long time ago, I also went to the same hell. It wasn't from violating the precept with my wife's younger sister like you, but I was indiscriminate and lay with any woman." He laughed as he spoke. When I died, the hell guardians, Niriyabala, captured me and sent me to this hell. When I first fell into the hell, it was pitch dark and I didn't know which direction to go. Then the soles of my feet grew hot. Wherever I stepped, there it grew hot. I leapt away and stood somewhere else, but the heat rose again. I hopped from place to place until my head hit the walls made of hell steel and nearly died. Then it got hot. Flames burst out from every direction and the heat intensified exponentially. Once those flames shot out toward me, my body would become dry and crisp. It is impossible to draw any kind of comparison to that heat. I bore the suffering and torment of that hell for a long time. I asked Luang Por further, "Have you ever broken this precept again in this lifetime?" Luang Por replied, "It was the same as before," and laughed. I wasn't scared straight because I couldn't remember. Luang Por said, "Wherever Mr. Khao went to court a young woman, his father would have to prepare to sell oxen to pay reparations. Let's just say that of the many oxen that filled the corral, hardly any remained." One time, Luang Por said, "One night I went to the temple. There were many young women there that night. When they were finished at the temple, the women exited the pavilion. I was a touchy-feely kind of man. I sought an opportunity to get my hands on my female target. In the temple courtyard, there was a rectangular post set in the ground, but I didn't notice it. My eyes were only on the woman. As I was trying to find a way to grab her, I didn't see the post, and my head slammed into it really hard. One bam, and I collapsed right there. My head burst open, I fell to the floor, and blood spurted out. I was mortified in front of my friends, mortified in front of the woman, and in agonizing pain. This description is likely sufficient for you, the reader, to understand what Luang Por Khao was like. Luang Por said, In this lifetime, if my practice of mental cultivation didn't enable me to attain release, I would have surely had to revisit that same old hell. I teased Luang Por. If that's so, the Hell Guardians probably remember your face. If the Hell Guardians had daughters, they likely wouldn't trust you. They would have to guard their daughters especially well. They would dole out even harsher punishment than that of the hot hell in order for Mr. Cow to be scared straight. Isn't that right, Luang Por? Luang Por laughed heartily until tears came out of his eyes. That night, we spoke of things to change the mood. You, the reader, will also get to smile inwardly as well. I asked Luang Por about another matter. With permission, Luang Por, back when you were married and your wife had an affair, and you were going to take a sword and slice both of them to pieces, what happened? Why would you have dared to take it that far? Luang Por laughed and said, Back then, I was only focused on working to get rich. I didn't have time for her because I was so exhausted from work. I worked from the morning and didn't head home until it got dark. The woman was, well, you know, when a husband doesn't pleasure his wife, she looks to another man to supply a cure for her boredom. At first, I didn't know. Later on, the villagers told me about it. Then I found a way to observe her. I would act like I was heading out to work and then hide so that she wouldn't see me. That man went into the house. It was just as the villagers had said. At that time, I felt very indignant. I resolved to kill both of them with my own hands. So I took my sword and sharpened it. I would slice them into pieces to my satisfaction. As I sharpened the sword, I contemplated that I am about to commit evil, papa, karma here, aren't I? Killing someone is easy. Once I do it, the evil falls onto me. Another thing is, the police are going to catch me and throw me in prison. I will spend a great many years in prison. My parents and relatives will feel shame around the other villagers. To commit evil karma because my wife is having an affair just won't do. If she really was my wife, she would have to submit both her body and mind only to me. But here, she has shared her body and shared her mind with someone else. Thus, this woman is not truly my wife. If I were to find another woman to be my wife, and that woman did the same thing, then what would I do? And then it occurred to me, in that case, maybe I should ordain as a monk. I wouldn't have to commit evil karma anymore. Once I thought of ordaining, I wanted to ordain as a monk that very instant. I hadn't even sharpened the sword sufficiently. I decided to leave to ordain as a monk right away. I stopped sharpening the sword and put it away. Then I grabbed some clothing essentials and went to enter myself as a candidate for monkhood, Naga, and receive ordination as a monk at a house temple, Wat Ban. However, the temple's abbot and monks and novices, Samanera, did not practice patipati. I couldn't live with them, so I left that temple in order to practice mental cultivation, pavana patipati, by myself. After being a monk for 5 reigns, Vasa, I learned of Luang Por Man. I went to listen to his Dhamma lecture and was filled with devotion, sattha, and admiration. I decided to change my monastic affiliation from the Mahanikaya order to the Tamayut order. Luang Por Lui and I were candidates for monkhood together. Prat Thamajedi Jum Pantulo was our preceptor, Upachaya. Thereafter, I studied methods of practice from Luang Por Man until I formed a solid understanding of how to practice. It took me 20 years of practice to truly know and see the truth of the Dhamma. I reflected on what happened in the past when I was a layperson. My life has reached this point because my wife was the main cause. I consider her a great benefactor of mine. If my wife hadn't been like that, I definitely would never have become like this. I would have delusionally cycled through birth and death without end. I have achieved enlightenment in this lifetime because of my wife. As such, I always dedicate merit to her.